2021 meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. I'll first start off with the script for remotely conducted open meetings, public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. As a preliminary matter, this is Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Airport Commission Chairman. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mrs. Topham?
Here.
Mr. Biscarin?
Here.
Ms. Planzer?
Here.
Mr. Marks?
Here.
And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Rafter?
Here.
Mr. Carberg?
Here.
Ms. Sylvia?
Here.
And Ms. Perales?
Here.
And then anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Marshall?
Here.
Mr. Lasden?
Here.
Ms. Nugent?
Here.
And let me just check the participant list. That looks like everybody who's with us. Introduction to remote meeting. Good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. The meeting will be aired at a later date on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and to take care not to screen share your computer. Or anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We now turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, and motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait till the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names, be acknowledged and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. With that, we'll move on to the posted agenda. And they'll take us to, again, the meetings being both audio and video recorded. And are there any questions or concerns with the agenda as posted? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted. We have the minutes from the August 11th Airport Service and Public Relations Subcommittee for review and approval. Are there any comments or concerns with those minutes which were in your packet? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Biscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We have our regular meeting from September 14th minutes for review and approval. Are there any questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Biscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. And we have for ratification the warrants of September 22nd and August 6th. Are there any questions or a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Is there any public comment for matters which are not otherwise on the agenda? Please raise your hand. I have the participant list open as well as the video. I don't see any members of the public. So we'll move on. Pending leases and contracts as set forth on Exhibit 1, which is incorporated by reference. Mr. Rafter.
Yeah, the first two are related. The first one is with Atlantic Aeolus, and it is changing the lease to Nantucket Energy from Atlantic Aeolus. The second one then is an amendment to the lease, and it switches the tenant to Nantucket Energy. So it's just a name change item there. The next is Jacob Engineering for $43,784 and supplemental agreement to the taxiway Echo project. That's for the work associated with Spot Zero. Next, we have another Jacobs contract amendment for $20,683. This is for additional work at the fuel farm related to Pfas. Next is a contract amendment, and I apologize, this came into last minute, consolidated two change orders. One was to extend the contract time for the Levangie contract, and the other was reconciliation of all the credits and change orders. So it's a credit of $52,087 on the security project. Next is a contract with McFarland Johnson for $10,400. That's a task order for professional services associated with decommissioning of runway 1230. We have a contract amendment with McFarland Johnson for $11,600. That's amendment number 1 for gate planning. That's all the associated documentation that had to go along with the creation of Spot Zero. We have a contract with ADB SafeGate for $70,000 over a 3-year period. That is for our airfield lighting supplies. Contract with South Shore Generator for $76,995 for the ARF generator enclosure. And the contract amendment with McFarland Johnson for PFAS source area investigation. It's additional sampling activities and plume investigation in the amount of $495,137.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Are there any questions on any of the pending leases or contracts? Hearing none, I would suggest that perhaps we should take it in 2 parts, where we take the first 2. Mr. Marks, I presume you will be looking to recuse on those 2. So, and if you're interested in voting on the rest, perhaps we could have a motion to approve, if the commission is so inclined, the first 2 lease amendments, and then take the rest collectively. There's such a motion on the amendment and assignment of lease and the lease amendment with Atlantic Aeolus Corp.
I'll
I'll
make that motion.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and we'll note that that's with Commissioner Marks recused. And is there a motion on the remaining contract and contract amendments?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
So the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. Moving on, the next item we carried forward from our last meeting, as we said that we would, for Mr. Walsh. And if there's, I don't see anyone present for that.
If,
Is there
If
anyone
I-
that would like to speak on that matter?
well, if I may, Mr. Chair, just to bring everybody up to speed, as you may recall, at the last commission meeting, you reaffirmed my action reinstating the full restriction for use of the airport by Mr. Walsh. However, his attorney at the time requested that the commission give him additional time to obtain and review documents from various parties to respond to our actions. I just wanted to provide you some additional information as to why I took this action. I'd like to show a very brief clip of a video, and a handout was just recently issued with the previous letters of the identifying some of the times when Mr. Walsh disregarded some of our directions. So I think you'll see this video and it speaks kind of some volume. So Noah, do you have that video? You could share your screen.
Yes, one
Make it
moment.
very brief.
Okay, I should be sharing the video. The aircraft will enter from the top of the screen, and I'll replay it a few times.
So you can see he taxied down taxiway Fox and then across the grass onto the ramp, not through paved area into that parking position. He's coming in from the left side there. So again, I just wanted to provide this as some additional information and pictures worth 1,000 words, and I thought it was worth it to show the commission. So if I don't know if Mr. Walsh is in the audience or not, but I guess it's the commission's decision as to whether you want to continue open this. I'm sure, I don't know if he has, if he wants to come back or dispute it, I'm not sure, but that was the last request from his attorney last month.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Does anyone have any comments on this matter?
Mr.
Makes
Chair,
sense. Yes, thank you, Ms. Marshall.
briefly recognized. Thank you. Christina Marshall, Anderson and Krieger. About 10 minutes prior to 5 p.m. tonight, I received an email from Mr. Walsh's attorney, Paul Grokey, who did, I believe, appear in front of the commission last month asking for additional time. He notified me that his office no longer represents Mr. Walsh in this matter, but as a final act on his behalf, he was requesting that the commission adjourn discussion once more on this agenda item to give Mr. Walsh the opportunity to obtain new counsel in Massachusetts. And I do understand based on this email that Mr. Walsh does wish to present information to the commission at some point in the near future, although I don't have further detail on that request. So I wanted you all to be aware of that. As I suggested at last month's hearing, particularly given that at least last month, the commission was inclined to leave the no trespass order in place while it was considering whatever presentation that Mr. Walsh may make. I think this request for an additional continuance is a reasonable one that maintains the status quo and maintains the no trespass order. But it is ultimately a decision of the commission whether or not to continue to extend or not.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Does anyone else have any comments? So it seems to me that we would just carry this forward until it's such time that we hear from Mr. Walsh. And when we hear from him, then we can put it back on the agenda. If that's amenable to all.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, we'll move forward in that manner. Ms. Marshall, you don't believe that needs a motion or any formal action, or is there something that you would suggest?
I don't believe it requires a motion. I do not recall whether or not the commission made such a motion last month. But I think we should just do the same thing. So if I recall correctly, there was no motion last time.
Right.
And you can just continue to adjourn on this issue until he's ready.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none, we'll move on. Pending matters, we have the capital approval process in the home rule petition. Mr. Rafter or Mr. Carberg, any information on that?
I'll speak for Noah. Noah reached out to our representative and his folks, and we still haven't heard back anything yet. Is my understanding. So we're still continuing to push that. We're hearing that it's in the final stages, but we need to get some accurate timeframes on it.
Okay. Please keep us updated. PFAS investigation update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 5 items for my update. There should be an activity report in your packet. We are still at 462 samples from 77 private wells. Thank you for your approval of the task order. It's attached to Exhibit 1. Just as a reminder, more for the members of the public who might be watching, this approval was follow-up from last month's meeting where the consultant presented the rationale for additional groundwater sampling, monitoring, and plume identification work. For the second item, I've attached a revision to the Airport Commission's water services policy. This contains revisions relevant to the continued supply of bottled water for affected residents. I have this document for your review and comment. Would modify the existing policy to codify or continued provision of bottled water service until such point as the water main is commissioned. It's here for your discussion, and the intention for Tom and myself is that we would bring back a final document for your approval next month. I don't know if you'd want to take this item now for discussion or if you would like me to continue.
Does anyone have any questions or comments related to the updated water service policy? I believe it was as discussed at the previous meeting. Nope, so it sounds like, go ahead, Noah.
Okay, thank you. For the water service project, Robert B. Auer has performed site reviews for the private side plumbing and excavation work for a number of the Nobodere Way, Evergreen Way area homeowners. I believe our next step is we look forward to hearing their pricing information and how this stands up with our previous estimates from probably about 6 months ago. The public side work is with the contractor for scheduling. This would be to excavate and install the curb stop in the street right of way. The contractor is very busy. They're trying to get the work in. There is a possibility that the timeline for Robert B. Auer would converge and they might take on this scope. We're in discussions with our consultant who's in discussions with the water company just to make sure this work is acceptable and could be accommodated for the homeowners. We'll continue to keep the commission informed. For the water main extension, we will begin advertising and noticing via the paper with this Thursday edition for the project schedule. Currently, I believe we're still assuming November 4th, but we may take a week delay due to supply chain issues. If that's the case, we will just issue additional advertisements through the paper and update our messaging accordingly. It does look increasingly likely that the delay into November will reorder the phasing approach from what was presented in our public meeting. It appears that Matacasham Valley Road would be the first area of work, with Skyline being the last area of work. And we are looking forward to receiving a schedule to finalize this information, but we wanted to keep you informed on the phasing. And we continue to coordinate this work with the town. The town has a number of other street projects this fall. So we want to make sure we're coordinating our schedule with them. In addition to the ads in the paper, we will be hand flyering residences along the water main routes. Project is still at 142-day duration. Outreach is underway. I want to say active outreach is underway to all homeowners on Matacasham Valley Road and Skyline who will be receiving water service connections. Now, this is active outreach to coordinate receipt of assigned access agreements, schedule walkthroughs, and obtain estimates. And we've also tasked our consultant to perform additional outreach to the Skyline Drive homeowners who will not receive a water service, but who may wish to coordinate with the airport on the placement of their curb stone. For miscellaneous items, I have two. Regards to the state revolving funds, which could be utilized to provide funding, no interest loan financing for the water main project. We reviewed the pre-application package with SRF staff and our consultant. We're still reviewing, we each have some items owed, but at this time, it's unlikely that we can meet the qualification criteria. Doing so would involve either rebidding the project or amending the bid specs to include mandatory language and scope items required by DEP. We'll keep looking at it, but I do want to set the stage that it may be a tough lift for the requirements that they have incumbent on the project funding. And the final item I have for you is an update on the catch basin investigative work and cleaning adjacent to catch basin C333 by Eastern Pipe Services. This is related to the fuel farm project. Catch basin C333 is the basin that we sunk stormwater into from the fuel farm. We didn't have good as-built records of that catch basin structure, so we contracted through McFarland Johnson with the pipe company for the inspection and camera work. They found that the catch basin from the sump secondary containment leads southeast, so towards the main runway, approximately 20 feet to a set of 10 infiltration chambers. At some point, we presume that a distribution box was lost and paved over. There's no other inflow or outflow to those infiltration chambers. It doesn't change our conceptual site model with the facility, but it's good to have that piece of work finalized. We can move forward and see if Weston recommends any additional sampling or investigation of that infiltration system. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Members have any questions for Mr. Carberg? I just have one on the last piece where you reported the catch basin. So there's no post-treatment, and is there any proposed? So that if the same thing is happening and if there was to be any contaminated water, it's essentially being directly infiltrated. Are there any water quality management inlets or anything of that sort associated with this drainage system, like a storm scepter or anything like that?
So nothing was immediately proposed, but the work was just accommodated, and I suspect it's something we'll talk over in a meeting tomorrow, a pre-scheduled meeting with the consultants. The water that's sumped out of the fuel farm is treated through the GAC filter, so it is tested. I don't want to say quarterly, but it is routinely testing at non-detect levels for Pfas. And the fuel farm spill control and containment plan involves a visual and a olfactory check for any oil product leakage. The question on if there's a oil water separator that should be installed in the future, I think is a good one. It's something I can bring to the meeting and report back on.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lasden.
Sure. The catch basin in question does have a deep sump, and it does have a hood on the outfall also. So it does have rudimentary separation criteria met.
Would you consider or recommend, given that it's coming directly from that type of an area, that we may want to also have a secondary treatment unit incorporated with such an infiltration system?
Typically, yes. In an area that's considered a LUPL area, you would have more robust treatment systems in place.
Right. Thanks.
Yep.
Does anyone else have anything else? Any questions or comments on the PFAS? And so that's something we can look into as well for going forward. Thanks. Moving on, declaration of surplus property, 10 Sun Island Road. Mr. Rafter. Is that ready?
Yes, this is the property on Sun Island Road adjacent to the boatyard along our perimeter fence. And this is the first step in that's necessary prior to us issuing an RFP. So we need a vote, I believe, to declare this as surplus property.
Are there any questions related to this particular property?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I please speak? Sorry. This actually is not in the packet and was on pending,
So is it
Um,
ready or it's not
and
ready?
it was not finalized, so
Okay.
it's,
We'll hold that over to next month. Thank you, Katie. Finance, budget schedule, Mr. Rafter?
I just want to update the commission. We will have at the next meeting a draft budget for your review. And hopefully the final budget at the December meeting, you'll have that prior to the meeting. But I also want to just make everybody aware that we are meeting with town administration the same day as the December commission meeting. So you'll see that before then. But if need be, if there's an issue or something, we can continue it on to January. So I just wanted to give everybody, get it on their radar that's coming out.
Thank you. We'll have a draft in November.
Yes.
Anyone have any questions or comments related to the budget development? Manager's report.
Thank you. On the projects taxiway Echo, the work is proceeding. Paving began yesterday, should be completed by October 22nd, weather permitting. Recently, we had to close down the area of taxiway Juliet, which requires a lengthy back taxiing for the remainder of the project. But it will give us full access in the next phase for that taxiway Juliet area, so it'll be a help. Security phase 2, contractors due back in to complete some additional punch list items, and thank you for approving earlier some additional work that they're going to be coming back to do some doors and things. Fuel farm rehabilitation, the temporary farm has been placed, or is in place, and work is being completed on that. Work has begun in real rehabilitation of the main farm and will continue through early January. We have a slight delay in the permitting of the temporary farm, but we expect that to be resolved by the end of the week. Runway 1230 decommissioning. We had a meeting with FAA, various lines of business from the FAA, and we're looking to close that runway on October 27th and have the markings contractor from the taxiway Echo project complete the necessary markings. So believe it or not, it's a very complicated process, but it's being well coordinated. Hangar development, we received comments back from Mr. Turner on his lease for continuing negotiations. We had a meeting with our legal today. Mr. Hagedorn has submitted a tenant alteration application for his hangar, and I believe will be proceeding to HDC. The Exhibit A project, I met with Rich Lasden last week, and we went and did a dive in our basement and found some documents that I believe would be helpful in identifying some of the parcels that need to be updated. And that's, again, an FAA requirement. So it may lead to another project of, there's a lot of cleanup work, I think, that is needed on parcel identification, GIS mapping on the various parcels. You may recall there's a number of them that are listed on the town's GIS as Airport Commission and some that are Town of Nantucket. So that may become a separate task order. On the RFP and IFB side of the house, maintenance contract for security systems, McFarland's working on developing the IFB for that. RFQ for the OPM on terminal space optimization deadline is October 14th. Working with legal to finalize car rental RFP. The HVAC project, we received 90% spec and drawings just yesterday or today, and we'll be issuing that shortly. On the operations side of the house, you may recall we had a few challenges with regard to fuel supply, and we're going to be reaching out to the Steamship Authority to hopefully have a meeting and sit down and discuss some potential solutions. However, while there's some problems linked to the various supply chain issues and logistics, we're also experiencing an unprecedented demand. And just to give you an example, During the month of September, we sold 311,230 gallons of jet fuel. Over the past 10 years, the highest number of gallons sold in jet fuel were 200,000. We're just over 200,000. So they're setting records out there. They're pumping more fuel with less people in what I would consider a somewhat constrained environment by having 3 different projects going on. So our folks are doing a great job out there. Maintenance is pitching in to help ops. Ops is, working diligently. Everybody's pitching in hard, the FBO, everyone. So kudos to them. One item I wanted to bring up too was the housing on our capital plan. We had initially reflected funding for an OPM and design. However, I forgot to mention that it was suggested by Capcom that we consider looking at the possibility of purchasing homes as it may be cheaper and faster. I included in your packet a handout of a list of advantages and disadvantages for this approach. The major hurdle to buying is lack of FAA approval, and therefore I just want to confirm that we will be proceeding with building, and we'll notify the Capcom accordingly if that's okay with the commission. So it's a major hurdle. We accomplished getting FAA approval for the Sun Island Road site. So I don't think it would be a very heavy lift to get FAA approval if we could anywhere else but there. So unless there's a disagreement, we'll proceed expeditiously with the development on Sun Island Road of the units we had previously discussed. Any questions before I go on to statistics?
Just one, Mr. Rafter. I think we should just take a second to go over the next step with the respect to the housing and the Capcom, and that the commission is all in agreement that that's the route that we're going to go, and that we really don't have a choice based on the approvals that were that have been granted and the work that's been done. And my only question or point of discussion would be how we convey back to the Capcom, because it would really behoove us to have them understand so that we could have a positive recommendation in their support to the finance committee and not be trying to play catch up later with that.
I will ask Noah to do that. He has responded to a summary of our meeting with other action items. So I believe it's an open item, and we'll just respond to them, indicate that the commission has discussed this and this is why we're proceeding accordingly.
Thank you.
I
And
would say it's a huge deal that we got the approval in the first place. So
it's the one of
only
a
one
kind.
in the country.
So next steps, I would ask Mr. Lasden and his group to prepare a task order to proceed with the design, and we'll have to obtain a OPM as well.
Thank you. Anything further on that? Okay.
Statistics, I'm not sure if you want me to go into too much detail. Operations are up, employments are up, Southwest apron up. And again, when we compare things back to last year with the pandemic, there's some significant percentage increases. But as I mentioned in our last meeting, it's an amazing amount of service we have for a seasonal airport, the number of destinations we have and so on and so forth. But I'm just going to try to go through and pick up some of the highlights here. United up 5,100. And again, they didn't do much flying last year because of the pandemic. Delta's up 1,574 passengers. JetBlue up 9,522 passengers. Elite started this year, carried 469 passengers in August. American up 52, Southern up 75%. Boston market was up 164% or 2,917 passengers. Charlotte traffic up. And again, all with good load factors. So that's great news. DC market saw a significant increase. New Bedford jumped up. We now have 2 carriers, Southern and Cape Air, covering that market. Newark, JetBlue added that this year. So they saw, again, that market saw a significant increase. So a lot of things, even Hyannis was up 244 passengers over last year. See if there's anything else. JFK, LaGuardia, Vineyard, Bedford Hanscom, Philadelphia, Providence, Chicago. Chicago, 2 carriers operated that route this year. Added 956 passengers. Norwood service by Southern was up from 107 to 150 passengers. So again, the air service is doing very well, or it was doing well this summer, a great season. Our jet fuel for August was up 23.5%, year to date 47%, and for September is up over 54%. So as I said, they're cranking out some fuel, selling some fuel here. Avgas up 23% year to date, 8.8% for August. Freight is doing well. Mail was down, but all other indicators were up. And we haven't had a chance to get to the noise report yet. Noah's been quite busy with some other items. Any questions on statistics before I go to personnel?
Anyone? No, please move on. Thank you.
Okay. Unfortunately, Lillian Sylvia has informed us that she'll be leaving the island and eventually leaving our employment. And in accordance with telecommuting policy that was previously passed by the commission, we've developed a transition process that we believe would benefit the airport, but involves some telecommuting that needs to be approved by the chair. And that is in your packet. We hate to lose Lil, but if there's a way we can do some telecommuting for a short period of time, and it's defined in a draft agreement that was in your packet, that would help us not only continue the work, but also train somebody in that position. So I would ask the commission to approve that, or I guess that's it. The policy says the chair, so I'm not sure if it requires a full vote or how that works.
I would happily open it up for discussion or hear any concerns from the commission. Does anyone have any concerns with the limited period? So hearing none, we'll consider that approved.
Thank you. Also, we're conducting interviews for the FBO customer service representative and administrative assistant, which would be Lil's position. And we will probably be advertising for some additional open positions, backfilling them shortly. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the manager's report? Hearing none. Commissioners' comments. Do any commissioners have any comments for items not otherwise on the agenda?
I would like to wish Lily and Lily all the best in her new ventures. She's been great, and I appreciate everything she's done for us.
I think it's fair to say you speak for us all.
You're here.
Oh, miss you. Well,
Thanks. I'll miss you guys too.
Happiness for you, Lily.
any public comment for items not on the agenda? I don't see any hands raised or members of the public. As such, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release, and for the minutes of 9/14/21 for review and possible release. Item B, clauses 3 and 4, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Robert Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission, and further to discuss strategies with respect to the deployment of security personnel and devices in connection with the no trespass order issued against Mr. Walsh. Item C, clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Airport Commission. And item D, regarding the FBO employees. Is there such a motion?
Make that motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I would add that motion